Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm. In this video, we're going to continue on where we left off. Last time we were discussing collisions, and this time we're actually going to take that discussion to a new level. No pun intended. As a matter of fact, this right here is bothering me. Notice how everything else is capitalized, but level is lowercase. That's because when I brought in this object, I named it lowercase level. I'm actually going to fix that before you guys start working on this, because this is going to bother me. I know it's a weird thing to worry about, but for me, I like things to be consistent. So I'm going to fix that really quickly while we're doing, or before we get started. Okay. All right. Oh, hello. Okay, now I can breathe a bit more because everything is okay. Good. Sorry. Excuse my I don't know what should you say, neuroticness there. All right. So we've created some level collisions. Now I want to create some collisions with other objects. And specifically, I want to create collisions that are going to do something. I want this game to do something, right? We can move through this maze all day long, but that's not super interesting. So first we need another object to collide with. So I have downloaded let me bring this over here. I've downloaded a spike that I have created in Photoshop. It's a very basic 16 by 16 spike, so 16 pixels per unit. Let's turn off the filter and let's turn off the compression and hit apply. And if we bring our spike out here, we can see that it matches the design of the level and it looks pretty good in the game, right? So let's say we have our Mr. Spike here and we want to avoid the spike. Well, we need a collider around that spike in order for our ghost to interact with the spike at all, right? So let's put together a collider. Now, we could use a box collider, we could use a circle collider, we can use a composite collider. I want to use something new called an edge collider 2D. This collider, or we can even do a polygon. Let's do a polygon collider. I'll show you how this works first, and then I'll show you the edge collider as well. So notice the polygon collider has tried to create a collider that matches the shape of my object, but it's not perfect because we're dealing with low pixel counts for these objects. So I can actually just edit each of these points and just kind of bring it down. Oh, hello. Now, if you click somewhere that's not an edge, it will create a new edit point. And or if you click something that's not like a conjoined area, it'll create something that's not an edit point. But now we have kind of a smoother triangle so that if we bump into this, that will work. The other option, I'm just going to duplicate this object. All I did was I typed Control D with the spike selected, and I'm going to move him over one. Now the other option we have, let's get rid of its polygon collider, remove, and let's use a edge collider, and let's go ahead and edit that. Now notice that the edge collider is just a line, and if I click anywhere on this line, it creates an edit point, and I can just go boop and boop. Very easily make a triangle. I actually like this one better. So I'm going to get rid of my original spike. I'm going to select the object and hit delete, and then I'm going to rename him to Spike, because he's the original. He's the original spike, and I'll put him right back where he's supposed to go. Okay. And actually, I want to move him up just a tad bit. Okay. All right. So now we have a spike with a collider, and we have a ghost with a collider. Let's see what happens when they interact. All right, I'm going to run down here, and then I'm going to bump into my spike. Oh, no. Oh, no. So it's working, but you'll notice it's not doing anything, right? We're bumping into it, but it's not doing anything. And specifically what we want it to do is we want it to reset this level, right? So in order to do that, we have to modify our player controller script. So I'm going to open that up really quickly. And it's opening on my other screen. Let me drag it over here. Okay, so just as a quick review, let's talk about what we did last time we did some programming. We created a reference to our player rigid body 2D. We grabbed some references to our input axes in Unity, and we created some movement using a public variable where we can set our speed. Excuse me. All of this was done inside the start method and the update method. Today we're actually going to use a different method other than the start and the update. We're going to use a method that handles collisions really, really well. So down here on line 23, or whatever line it is for you, the end of our update method, so the curly brace at the very end of our update method, I'm going to put my cursor right behind it and hit enter a couple of times to give us some space. Now we're still inside the public class, we're just outside of any of the existing methods. And what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new method called, and we'll use the keyword private, so private void, and we'll say on collision enter. Now notice it's trying to finish for me. If you're using Visual Studio, it will recognize, oh, you're typing something that I recognize. Let me go ahead and try to finish that for you. If I were to click this, I can select that. I can double click it, and it finishes the rest of the method for me, creates it perfectly. So what this is doing is it says this is a private method. We only want these collisions to be interacting with this player object. Void means we're not returning any type of the method. We'll talk about return types in a later video. On collision enter 2D is the name of the method, and this specifically is going to fire off when we collide with another 2D object that has a collision on it. Now, it's going to pass in some data. It's going to pass in a collision 2D data type, basically it's going to pass in the collision itself, and it's going to name it collision. Okay, so this may be a bit confusing, but hopefully it'll get a little easier as we go forward. All right, so now we have to think about what we want this to do. Well, first, if we think about our game here, we don't want it to actually reset the level if we hit the edge of our level. We want to be able to hit the walls and not reset the game, right? That would be very annoying. We only want it to reset when we hit this spike object. So what I want to do is I want to tag spike as an enemy. So if we have our tag selected, or our object selected, sorry, and we go over here to tags, we can see that we have all kinds of different tags that we can use. We have untagged, respawn, finish, editor only, main camera, player, and game controller. I'm going to add a new tag. So I'm going to click add tag. And notice that I have a list of custom tags, but that list is empty. So I'm going to hit the plus button here to create a new tag, and I'm going to type enemy. All right, enemy, and click save. Now if I were to go back to my spike, I can see I have not selected the new tag yet. It just says, I just created a new tag. It didn't actually associate it with this object. So I have to then go back in and select my new enemy tag. Okay, so this object is now tagged as an enemy. So in my script, I can basically say, if collision, meaning whatever we collided with, dot tag, meaning the tag of that object, equals enemy. And I think it's actually if collision dot game object dot tag. So we're looking at the collision that we've made. We're going to get the game object of that collision. Then we're going to get the tag of that game object. And if it's enemy, then we're going to do something. Now, those of you unfamiliar with computer programming, this has two equal signs. The reason why is because anytime you are comparing data from one to another, so we're comparing this data to this data. Anytime you're comparing, you're going to use two equal signs, right? If you're trying to assign this data to this, then you would use a single equal sign, which means no matter what we collide with, we're going to set its tag to enemy That's not what we want to do. We want to compare to see if its tag is enemy. All right, now Visual Studio's mad at me down here because I've created an if statement, but I have not put any code inside of the if statement. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to add in some bracket or some braces here to say, hey, yeah, I know I got to put something in there. I haven't put anything in there yet. All right. So basically what we're doing here is we're saying if we collide with an object and its tag is named enemy, then we want to do something. And the thing we want to do is we want to actually reset our level. So what's an easier way to do this? I have in my notes a very complicated way to do it. But I'm trying to see if there's an easier way to go about doing this. Let's do it this way. All right, so this is a bit complicated, but this is going to help us to learn some of these concepts a bit easier. In this game, we're only going to have one level, right? We're not going to be moving from level to level. We're only going to have one level. But doing it this way, we're going to give ourselves the functionality of creating new levels. So here's what we're going to do. We need a couple of new public variables. Well, actually, we only need one. So up here, after our public float speed variable, I'm going to create a public string variable, and I'll call it this level. And I'm going to set it equal to, let's go back to Unity. Notice that this scene itself, and if we look in our scenes, we have a sample scene. Notice that this is called sample scene. I actually don't want it to be called sample scene. I'm going to save this, save the project, because if I make a mistake here, it might cause some issues. I'm going to rename this scene, and I'm going to call it level 1. Now it's going to say the following scenes have been changed. Do you want to reload? Yeah, let's reload the scene. So now it's called level 1. So this is the level that we're on. We can make new scenes. We can duplicate it and make level 2, level 3, level 4, whatever we want. I want it to be level 1 for right now. And that's the only level we're going to have right now. Maybe we'll add something new later. So back here in Visual Studio, I'm going to call this level 1. But it is a public string, which means we can change it if we really want to. So we're going to say this level equals level 1 for now. The next thing we need to do is we need to bring in a new library. So I told you either last week or the week before that up here, these are libraries and we're not going to play around with them. And we're not. We're not actually going to delete any of these. What we are going to do is we're going to add a new one to this list. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to type using Unity engine, exactly like that, with a capital U, capital E, dot scene management, and then a semicolon. This will allow us to manage our scenes using the code. So we can actually program in scene movements here in our scene management. Okay, so now that we have those things, we have a variable that's storing the name of our level, and we have a Unity scene management library associated. Down here, we can actually write the line of code that will reset our game if we collide with the spike. So we can say scene manager dot load scene, and then the scene we're going to load is this level. So this level, and notice that it's trying to finish it for me. Visual Studio is very helpful. Okay, so this new method that we created should, if we've done everything correctly, when it collides with a game object that's tagged as enemy, it should reload the game or reload that level for us. Let's go ahead and attach it to Unity, and let's hit stop. And let's go back to Unity and let it load. I want to make sure that my script has updated with our new method, and it has, and our new public variable and all that. So let's go to my ghost, and let's make sure we have our new public variable, which is level 1, which is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, everything looks fine. It should all work. Let's play it and find out. Okay, so my wall collisions still work. We're not resetting the game when I collide with the walls. That is good. That's what we want. What should happen is when we collide with this spike down here, it should reset the game for us. So let's get close and let's run into him. And it did. Look at that. So now we started at the beginning of the game because we ran into the spike. And what we could do is we could also add in some code that reduces the amount of lives that we have on our ghost, which is another ironic thing, right? Ghosts don't have lives. Maybe the amount of unlives that we have. And then whenever we get to the end of our lives, we can have a game over screen or something like that. But anyway, that's working properly. That is behaving exactly like I want my enemies to behave. My game is working. Now we actually have a loss state, meaning there's consequences for not playing properly. So yeah, I mean, this thing's actually coming together. It's looking pretty good so far. And I'm pretty excited with our progress. This method may be a bit difficult for you if you're not kind of following along with the video. And I went a bit quickly, so I just want to one more time explain all of these things and what they're doing. If you feel like you understand it, you probably can skip this, but I wouldn't, because it's another opportunity for you to learn some of the stuff we just did again. So private is just the type of, or the scope of the variable, meaning that this method here isn't going to be accessible by other scripts. We have void, which is the return type. We're not actually returning any data back to our script. We're going to do everything we need inside this method. So it's a void. On collision, enter 2D with a capital O, capital C, capital E, and then 2D capitalized. This is a special method that Unity recognizes that is called whenever a collider 2D has touched another collider 2D. We're going to pass in that collision. So these are the details of the collision, and we're going to put them into a variable called collision. Then here we're going to say if our collision has a game object that is tagged as enemy, then we are going to load this level. And up here, we have this level set to level 1 because we're on level 1. Now, in order for that scene manager to work properly, we need this library using Unity Scene Management. All right, so that's all the new stuff. That's all we were focused on doing today. Cool. Hopefully your game is working just like mine. Now, you don't have to put the spike right here. You can put them kind of wherever. You can rotate the spike around so you can put them on the walls. Matter of fact, we're going to do that next week. I'm going to show you how to create objects that you can duplicate very easily. We're going to get into that next week. But you can play around with this, modify it however you want. Once you're done, make sure you record a video of your spike working properly and submit that so you can get points for this assignment. And until then, I'll see you next week. All right. Bye.